Most supplements don't fail because they're inherently useless. They fail because they're mismatched. Mismatched to the person, the context, and the actual functional problem trying to be solved. And when you don't have a clear way to think about supplements, everything starts to look equally promising and equally confusing, especially when packaged in tight little marketing language. If you've ever stood in front of a shelf or scrolled through the options online and thought, this all sounds reasonable, but I have no idea what actually matters for me, that's the gap right there. I'm Dr. Kenny, an IFM certified functional medicine practitioner, and a lot of my work centers on helping people filter the signal from the noise in exactly this kind of situation. So instead of giving you another list based on trends or popularity, I want to walk you through 5 supplements that consistently stand out, and more specifically, why so many versions of them don't actually deliver on what they promise. The truth is, the supplement industry makes this harder than it needs to be. In the United States, dietary supplements do not require FDA approval before they go to market. A company can formulate a product, make label claims, and start selling without ever demonstrating that the dose works or that the contents match what's printed on the label. That regulatory burden runs almost entirely backwards from the way most people assume, especially with the way the marketing language is aligned. Within that environment, 3 specific moves consistently separate a well-made supplement from one that looks the part but doesn't deliver. The first is the dosing illusion, where a real ingredient that is well-researched is used in a formula, but it's only present in a fraction of what the research actually used to show a benefit. For example, magnesium being in 10, 20, even 50 milligrams per serving, rather than 300 plus for an actual benefit in sleep and nervous system support. The label shows the accurate form, but the dosing is not anywhere near where it can be therapeutic. The second is in the form substitution, using D2 instead of D3, for instance, or magnesium oxide instead of magnesium glycinate. It's only 4% absorbable. Or worse, fish oils in their ethyl ester forms rather than triglycerides. It has the same ingredient name, so it looks good on a label, but very meaningfully different absorption and influence on your chemistry. The cheaper forms often cost less to manufacture, which is why they tend to get chosen in combination formulas. The third is the infamous proprietary blend, a branded combination with no disclosure of the individual ingredient amounts or forms, just the total amount of that blend. You can see what's in it partially, but you have no idea how much. Without that, there's really no way to evaluate whether anything is present at a dose that actually matters. These moves are legal, they're common, and they're spread across price points from discount shelves to premium wellness brands. Knowing how they work and where the research backs it up and choosing companies that are grounded in the research, that is the filter. And that filter is what makes the 5 supplements that I'm about to talk about actually useful. Because all 5 have strong clinical evidence behind them, and all 5 have common versions on the market that quietly undermine that evidence. One additional practical gate to consider as we jump into this supplement conversation is that third-party testing certifications can go a long way. This includes NSF, USP, and even consumer lab certifications. I personally won't use a product clinically with my patients if I can't verify what's actually in it. That's one of the first questions, and it needs an answer before the others even start to matter. So let's get into the first supplement, vitamin D. There's a distinction worth making up front that changes how people think about vitamin D. This is not a vitamin in the most traditional sense. It behaves more like a hormone precursor in many cells throughout the body. There are receptors in virtually every tissue, and it influences everything from your immune system regulation to mood chemistry, inflammatory signaling, and even the way calcium is deposited and metabolized throughout your body. A deficiency here is not a gap in one single nutrient. It's usually a signaling gap that touches multiple systems at once. So get your vitamin D checked. A 2023 pooled analysis study that included 7.9 million people over 22 years found that roughly 40% of the world population showed deficient levels of vitamin D. That's huge. And this even held across geographies with consistent sun exposure. Low vitamin D is not an edge case. It's a huge part of the conversation for overall health optimization. And unfortunately, it's still not a very commonly run regular blood lab, so you often have to ask for it. And by the way, if you want to dig into the research behind this and other studies that I included in this video, I've put them together in a free research summary, and it's in the pinned comment and the description below. Here's where the form problem shows up. Vitamin D2 is cheaper to produce, and it still appears in many products, including those commonly prescribed by some well-meaning physicians. D3 raises your serum levels more effectively and maintains them longer as well. A label that simply reads vitamin D without specifying which form is a question worth asking. Dose is important as well. Vitamin D3 is a fat-soluble vitamin, so you don't want to do too much. Too much of a good thing is not necessarily more of a good thing. Many multivitamins contain around 400 to 600 IUs, or special vitamin D units. It's not a therapeutic amount for many people who are deficient. Getting enough vitamin D in the research typically requires doses closer to 2,000 to 5,000 IUs, and it's adjusted based on your current levels, so it's important to monitor so you don't get to a toxic status. It's important to note that you shouldn't just take vitamin D for symptom improvement without understanding what your blood levels are. I've had this happen with a few patients where they've heard a wellness influencer say something like vitamin D helps with sleep or hormone status, and they're on higher doses for long periods of time and reach toxic levels. So please, please, please make sure to get tested. It's important to note that vitamin D doesn't work in isolation. It increases calcium absorption, and it interacts importantly with vitamin K as well. Taking D3 consistently without attention to vitamin K2 is one of the most common gaps I see. They function as a system. Vitamin K2 is the quietest supplement on this list, and it earns a place specifically because of what it completes. K2 operates through special proteins called matrix GLA protein and osteocalcin. These govern where calcium gets deposited throughout the body, whether it's toward your bones, like your teeth, and for osteoporosis, or toward your soft tissues, like in arterial calcification or precursors of heart disease. That routing function becomes incredibly relevant for anyone who is supplementing D3 regularly, because more D3 means more calcium absorption, and K2 is the signal that determines where it's going to go. Without it, you're increasing calcium availability without the mechanism that truly makes it beneficial. MK7 is the specific preferred form when it comes to vitamin K2, with a significantly longer half-life than its partner, MK4. The dosing in the research ranges typically between about 90 and 360 milligrams per day. And it's usually, I included vitamin K here because it makes long-term vitamin D supplementation more complete. Next, let's talk about omega-3s. Both EPA and DHA are specific forms of omega-3s, and they have the strongest evidence bases of any supplements on this list. They also have one of the most consistent quality issues across the board. A 2024 meta-analysis pooled 18 randomized clinical control trials over 134 participants and found that omega-3 supplementation reduced the risk of cardiovascular death, heart attack, and coronary procedures. Most notably, the form EPA alone showed a stronger protective effect than EPA combined with DHA. Beyond the heart health outcomes, both EPA and DHA are raw materials for anti-inflammatory signaling compounds throughout the body. Especially noteworthy are resolvins and protectins. They support everything from your cellular level and the membrane integrity, all the way to immune system and inflammatory signaling behavior. They also modulate the gut immune axis, which is a huge conversation. The heart research is probably the most replicated, but the mechanisms run way broader. And by the way, if you want an easy to digest breakdown of this study and the rest that I used in this video, I've included a free research summary in the pinned comment in the description below, so check it out. I mentioned the quality issue with fish oil, and one of the biggest culprits is the process of oxidation, and it's more significant than many people realize. Oxidized fish oil doesn't just lose its potency, but some research suggests that it may even work against its anti-inflammatory effect that you're after. Reputable manufacturers address this through several different processes that help to improve the quality and its shelf stability. Form matters here too. The triglyceride form in particular is how EPA and DHA occur naturally in fish. When it comes to bioavailability and the form that your body also best recognizes, it favors this triglyceride form. So read the label very carefully because oftentimes EPA and DHA are broken down as well. You're not just looking at the total fish oil content, but rather how much of these more active ingredients are present. That gap can be quite significant between the total oil in the capsule and the EPA-DHA amounts. The next nutrient we're going to talk about is magnesium, and this is the one that I see misrepresented most consistently, especially when it comes to discussing the form. The gap between what's commonly sold on the shelves and what the research actually uses is quite substantial. Magnesium itself is a cofactor or a copilot in over 300 different reactions throughout the body. Energy production, creating hormones, muscle relaxation, nerve signaling, the list goes on. Suboptimal magnesium status, not just deficiency status, is common in people who are under sustained stress, which, let's be honest, who isn't, people who sweat regularly, and people with gut absorption issues. Stress also accelerates how much magnesium leaves the body through the urine, which creates a very compounding dynamic. The same circumstances that deplete it also raise the demand for it. So it's a vicious cycle in many people. A 2025 randomized control trial looked at magnesium bisglycinate, a particular form, in adults with poor sleep, and they found improvements in sleep onset, efficiency, and nighttime cortisol levels. The mechanism behind magnesium for sleep is not primarily sedative, which can be very helpful for many. Magnesium supports the nervous system's ability to downregulate, and it helps the body do something it's already designed to do once that depletion is corrected. I always say that magnesium bathes our nervous system reactions, and that's very important. Here's a little pet peeve of mine, is that magnesium oxide is the form that you'll see most commonly on shelves. This is basically the rust of the magnesium world. Some research places its absorption rate or bioavailability as low as 4%. It's also used as a stool softener, which tells you something about what it does at typical dosages. The forms glycinate, bisglycinate, malate, and threonate absorb better with far less gut impacts. And the therapeutic range for sleep and nervous system support is often between about 200 to 400 milligrams, but definitely consult your practitioner before you go higher. I feel like the worst insult I see sometimes is seeing magnesium on a label, but it's in magnesium oxide form that boasts 100 milligrams, and yet you're probably only receiving 4 of it. And very important as well is when you go and get a traditional blood lab drawn, they're looking at magnesium in your plasma, not in your red blood cells. So when you want to look at your functional magnesium status, it's best to look at red blood cell magnesium. It will give you a much more accurate picture. And if you want to know your status rather than assuming it, that's the best test to ask for. The final supplement tends to surprise people in this context because it's still mostly associated with athletic performance. Creatine supports the rapid regeneration of ATP, or your primary energy currency that every cell in your body runs on. Your muscles use it, yes, but your brain uses it too. And the evidence base has truly matured over 3 decades, and it's expanded meaningfully to cognitive performance, of course, muscular endurance and performance, as well as working memory and mitochondrial energy support, which are topics just near and dear to my heart. So this does belong in clinical conversations and overall health and wellness for reasons that have nothing to do with the gym and performance. When it comes to quality, the story around creatine is a little bit different. Creatine monohydrate is the form with the most research behind it, and it's also the most affordable. The premium alternatives out there like creatine HCl and even buffered versions don't have as much meaningfully significant evidence to justify the price difference, in my opinion. What most of the research shows for its wide benefits is around 3 to 5 grams per day. No loading phase required like in athletic performance. Dietary creatine also from red meat and fatty fish can contribute, but typically it's not not enough to reach that saturation range that your research uses. Supplementation helps to close that gap reliably. So here's the frame I want you to take away from this discussion on these top 5 supplements. The 5 on this list are not here because they're trending or because anyone is well incentivized to push them. Magnesium glycinate is not a compelling business model, to be honest. Creatine monohydrate as well has no margin story ultimately, and D3 paired with K2 doesn't require some massive proprietary blend to work well. They're here because when you apply consistent quality criteria and look at the evidence across populations and contexts, these are the ones that hold up in the most people. That's a very different selection process than a trend or marketing spend. And if there's one practical step that I want you to take away from this video, look at whatever you're taking and ask these 3 big questions. Do I know this specific form? Does the dose match what the research actually used? And has an independent organization verified the label? Those 3 questions will tell you more about whether your supplement routine is working than almost anything else. And if you want to see what happens when supplementation is applied without that kind of thinking, the MTHFR video is one of the clearest examples I've made of what it looks like when the right ingredient meets the wrong context at the wrong time, and why sequencing and terrain matter just as much as the supplement that you choose. That one is worth watching next. I'm Dr. Kenny, Root Cause Health Detective. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.